Welcome to the Krafty Max Originals BeadALong. You should have already received your kit, and inside the kit there should have been some beads that were labeled with numbers. If you want to do it with masking tape on top of a mat, that is a great way to do your numbers. If you don't have a mat, which these are special designed with a core so that the beads don't bounce, you can also use a paper towel. And if you are using a mat and you're using it on a table, I recommend you tape it down to the table, because often what happens is that as you go to put your work, or as you go to do your work, you will actually hit it with your hands and start sliding it over and bouncing the beads. Now, everybody should have gotten a spool of Fireline. You will not use the whole spool. So if you are a beader, you can use this for future beading projects. I use 6-pound crystal for just about everything that I do. I find that it's a nice strong weight without having to be so thick that you have trouble getting it back through the beads a couple times. Now, with the Fireline, I usually tell people to cut a 3 to 6 foot length. It just kind of depends on your preference and how much experience that you have. Once you have cut the Fireline, the best way to put it onto the needle is to actually take the end and squeeze it through your teeth, and so it makes a flattened edge, and then you can stick it through most needles. Okay, you would have gotten a printed chart as well. And with this chart, you will get the legend, which corresponds with the beads that you were given in the numbers. And that shows where they are, what beads go on what part of the design. And also what's called a word chart. Now, I generally do about 5 rows at a time. I'm not sure where I learned to do that, but it's something I've kind of always done. And so I go through my patterns and I mark it out. And that's also where I take my photos for working photos. And I do. The first 3 rows are always your foundation rows. So those 3 have to be together. And then I do every 3 and 8 after that, which is every 5. So an 8, 13, 18, 23, all the way through, so that the entire pattern is done. And it makes it a lot easier farther in. Now, if you do see where I've put okay on some of these, it's because I've actually used this word chart a couple times. And that's where I had stopped at those times. Now, if you are an experienced beader, my suggestion would be for you to go ahead and skip ahead a video or 2, because you won't need this video. This is how to start peyote stitch. If you are new to beading, especially peyote stitch, please keep the video going and I'll teach you how to do the first few rows, and then you'll be off on your own. All right. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the first 3 rows. Now, if you look at this chart, it says lefts and rights, which the way that I teach it, you actually turn your work so you don't have to do a left or a right row. The other thing you notice is that in the parentheses is how many, and the number after or letter, if you're in a larger pattern, is what the color is. So for instance, the first and second row is 36 fours. So you just pull them down, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 2, 4, 6. Okay. And so you'll do 36. And then the next one says to do 18 of the 4s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Now, some people put them side by side. Some people stack them on top. For me, it really depends on what type of pattern I'm doing and how many colors are in each row. If it's short rows, then I often do them side by side in stacks of 5. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one in the middle, so I know where my breaking point is. If they're really long, I usually only do them above each other. So once you have threaded your needle, you're going to work from what's called the non-working tail, or a dead tail, and you're going to wrap it around your pinky several times. Make sure it's loose. Because that thread does stay around your pinky for a little while, and you don't want to cut your circulation off. It's really only just to hold it so that you can get your first few rows in. Some people use stop beads. If that's what you prefer, go right ahead. Yeah, excuse me. So what we're going to do is, to start our peyote, is we're going to thread on stitch rows 1 and 2. So we just add all of these beads. Now, with this pattern, you're actually going to be doing the first couple rows just with background colors, and so this is the easiest way to start. If you do have a pattern that has actual colors in the first few rows, you have to just be very careful to keep them on the same sides that they belong on, and you'll catch that here in a minute. All right, so I have all 36 on. Now, as I slide them down my thread, I have a little system that I do. I kind of wrap it up around my fingers and then over again so that it gives me a tension. Sometimes I do it that way, sometimes I do it this way. It just kind of depends, and whatever feels the best is the best thing to do for you. Now what you're going to do is you're going to pick up one bead, okay? And this is the start of your third row. And again, I'm going to pull a little tension here so that I can keep my hands out of the way as much as I can. This is your first and second row. This on the needle is your third row. So you're going to skip a bead and go through the next bead. And when you pull your thread through, gotta wrap a few more times there, my thread was sliding, hang on. You will get this little stopper at the end. Roll it around so you can see. Can you see it there? There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing over and over until we get to the end. So we're going to pick up a bead. We're going to skip the next bead and go through a bead. And as you do this, you're going to get this little up and down effect all the way down your row of beads. Okay, so we're going to pick up a bead, we're going to skip a bead, and we're going to go through. We're going to pick up a bead, skip a bead, and go through a bead. And what this is doing is giving you what's called ups and downs, or hills and valleys, depending on how we're teaching it. And so you're going to get these little stair step effect. That is peyote stitch. So continue on down to the end. So you pick up a bead, skip a bead. Now some people pull their thread every single bead. Some people go and pull it at the end of a row. The preference is yours. However, I would recommend two things. One is that you don't go more than about 6 or 8 beads without pulling it. And two, when you do pull, if you've got more than one, I hold it here. I hold over the beads, and I pull the direction that the thread comes through. And what happens is, if you don't do those two things, one is you get a lot of knots. And that's why you hold it, because then the thread feeds through correctly. The other is, if you're pulling this way, you'll get a little notch in the bead. Now, these beads you're using, if you're not aware, are called delicas. And they are a brand of seed beads specifically designed for seed beaters. And they actually, I'm going to turn the light on here to give us a little more light. Sorry about that. They actually are little tiny tubes of glass. Now, they are a breed of seed beads. The difference between the common seed bead and delicas is this. When you look at the beads on regular seed beads, they kind of look like a donut. They have a rounded edge, a small center, and they're kind of puffy in the middle, like a donut. When you look at a delica bead, it looks like a straw. It has very even and clean lines along the edges. And then through the middle is a very large hole, kind of like a drinking straw. Delica brand is not the only one that sell beads like this. However, they are, by my opinion, by far the best. And that being said, they also are the most evenly spaced. So each one of them is almost exactly the same size, which again, for stitches like this where they're going to lock into each other, that is a good thing. All right, almost down to the end. Okay, now for you, those of you that are middle to advanced beaters, you can skip to video 3. And that will show you how to do the ends. And then video 4 will show you how to do the fringe. If you are a beginning seed beater or beginning with peyote, then you're going to want to watch the video 2 because it's going to show you how to do the next 5 rows and how to tie off your string. Okay, so go ahead and either skip to video 2 or video 3, and I'll see you then.